It's all about the life and times of Ja Morant, Glass Jaw Morant. He's been suspended. Where have we seen that before? Suspended from the Grizzlies, which is always hilarious. It's like suspending a teacher during summer from their job. So Ja Morant suspended by the Grizzlies after what? After he said, you know what? I'm going to flash my gun again. And he did this on an Instagram live feed over the weekend. And that is now twice that he has been caught. And the person that turned him in is named Ja Morant. Hello? Can you say stupid is as stupid does? Now, he did issue an apology. It was a rather odd apology. It happened during Game 1 of the Western Finals, the same night of a very important draft lottery. Many people also looking at that and wondering whether or not either he had his lawyers write that or his lawyers used AI technology to write it. I don't know, but it certainly did not seem like it ever touched the mind of Ja Morant. Now, the commissioner, Adam Silver, who is the ultimate players commissioner, he said he was shocked by the video and is assuming the worst, he said, when discussing what kind of punishment Ja Morant's going to get, which is interesting considering Adam Silver has final edit on what will happen. And so this is the story. Silver also claimed he genuinely believed Ja Morant when they met in that famous made-for-television sit-down interview. And right before that, the commissioner met with Ja Morant. So everyone and their uncle has chimed in on this. It's bouncing around the pinball machine of hot takes. So let us discuss the question: how are things at the NBA headquarters in Manhattan right now regarding Ja Morant? So I've got Penn and Teller, Spaghetti Western, and Hibachi. And we will combine all of these things together, and we are going to make a quick draw McGraw is what we're going to make, which I think is what Ja Morant, he must have loved that, quick draw McGraw back in the day. All right, so number one. Number one. So to answer the question, how are things at the NBA headquarters in New York City regarding Ja Morant? They are, the word is simmering. That is the word. Simmering is the word. Emotions are bubbling up. They are bubbling up. It is an open wound. There's a lot of pus. There's a lot of pus bubbling up. And it's really a wonderful story because I'm not involved in it. I don't work for the NBA. I'm not Ja Morant. I don't know Ja Morant. I am just sitting on the sidelines as a rubbernecker, and this is a 16-car pileup, and it is as clear as can be. You can see all the wreck and the crack. Oh, it's just amazing. So you slap Ja Morant on the wrist after he grabbed your funfetti treat, and then he goes back to the cookie jar to get another one of those funfetti cookies. This whole chapter right now that we're in, and it's still a developing story, but it's like Penn and Teller's TV show, Fool Us. Ja Morant exposed a lot of powerful people as gullible, as country bumpkins. And nobody, I don't care what your background is, where you're from, it doesn't matter. Nobody likes to be made the fool. And Ja Morant did just that. He was able to use some skullduggery. He followed, there's a legend. I love the quotes of this particular person in Hollywood, a guy named W.C. Fields. My favorite quote all time is from W.C. Fields. This is not my favorite of all time, but he made a film called Never Give a Sucker an Even Break, which is also a quote of his, never give a sucker an even break. And so that's where we are in the story right now. Adam Silver has the same level of intelligence despite all his diplomas and all his degrees and all that. He's a ragamuffin. And then you've got Jalen Rose, who the NBA made sure, and Jalen Rose, the people of Ja Morant's camp made sure Jalen Rose was there for the interview. And Jalen Rose looks like a big dummy. And all of these other people, we don't even know who these people are. The other experts, the other people that work for the league office, they all signed off on Ja Morant and his sincerity and all this. And he was literally and figuratively trying to avoid smiling while he issued the choreographed apology. We talked about it all the time. Like you'd see he was trying to hold back a smile because he thought this is so ridiculous. They gave him some quackery, some pseudoscience therapy, which they sent him some clinic in Florida. I don't even know if he ever went to the clinic in Florida, but they claimed he had therapy. Therapy that is very available, the palming therapy, if you ever post something on the internet you're not supposed to post. Now, page 2 here. Why is Ja Morant such a hot potato? Well, other than the obvious, the guns, other than the obvious is this guy's a heavyweight. He's a heavyweight. Many people are floating their boats on the gravy train. The train of water that's going across the lake there, the boats that are floating in the gravy, millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars are on the line. We're talking big money, big money, big money, big money, and no whammy, you got a whammy. To put this in perspective, now Ja Morant has a team of people around him, and we see many of them in these Instagram videos that he posts online or his friends post online. So what we're talking about here, there's a negotiation because Ja Morant's salary is about to go up, up, and away. He was making a ton of money anyway, $12.1 million, but now it is set to skyrocket. And I hope you're sitting down and you're taking your meds. Ja Morant's going to make $33.5 million next NBA season under the new agreement between the owners and the players. How much is he how much is he going to lose? So it really depends on the length of the suspension. We'll get to the length on what we think is going to happen in a minute. But assuming a player loses they're going to lose 145th of their salaries, the math on that, according to the CBA. They said there would be no math. That includes missed exhibition games, regular season games, playoff games, and that's for a suspension of 20 games or less. Anything over 20 games, and it's 1/110th of their salary you will miss for the same number of games. But so there is a negotiation going on right now, and Ja Morant, people around him that are riding his coattails, are trying to cut the losses here. And Morant's posse is looking to cut a deal. And you don't need me to tell you that. It's kind of obvious here. You have NBA corporate partners. You have league executives. You have people from all over the spectrum who are exchanging messages, how bad this makes all of the players look, how bad this makes the NBA as a league look because they let this guy back in right away. And it's just like a lot of embarrassment. And there should be a lot of embarrassment because they all look like idiots. Ja Morant played them as a fool, played them like a violin. And so the issue is taking the temperature in the room. Ja Morant is headlining. He's a headline guy in that sport. He's also a guy right now who's in the gun-toting spaghetti western because he went heel. He broke the code of conduct in the NBA. The code of conduct. He also broke the code of the West. When I say spaghetti western, I'm talking about the code of the West there. Now, I try to live by that. We talk about it from time to time. Take pride in your work. Always finish what you start. I'm a big believer in that. I think that's a life well lived. Keep in mind, though, that the code of the West actually includes 10 golden rules. And one of those rules is a violation that Ja Morant took part in. And that is known as ride for the brand. And that is a big one that Ja Morant violated. You've got to protect the brand, protect the company. The first people, and I know this, I worked in the advertising business my entire life in radio. We do advertising, in broadcasting, podcasting. The first people to run away from a burning building or a burning radio show are the advertisers. Always has been. I believe it will always be that way. And if you're hurting the product, if you're going to hurt the market share, or if they think you're going to hurt the market share, they immediately flip the panic lever, and they don't wait for the dust to settle. They just go for it with gusto. All right, final point. So we had a bunch of prominent, not so prominent, talking heads, blowhards, and gas bags who have chimed in on this, including washed-up former NBA player J.J. Redick, the guy that was great for 3 quarters, couldn't make a big shot to save his life in the 4th quarter. So J.J. Redick, he got on his TV soapbox there, and he brought politics into this. He brought up a politician that supports guns, and he Said he didn't understand why this is a big deal and why. I'm paraphrasing this, but he essentially was like, well, how come politicians are able to support guns, but NBA players can't show their love of guns? And he's not the only one. I'm bringing up J.J. Redick, but there's other people that have been trying to sugarcoat this thing, and not many, but there are some. They stand out. So here's the question, why are some people, like the aforementioned J.J. Redick and others, making excuses or downplaying the situation? All right, so the easy answer here is because they're morons, but they're also devotees to the players, right? There's a lot of people in the NBA media that we talk about this all the time. They're lemmings. They genuflect. And there's also a certain fraternal order. If you're a former player, you're supposed to look out for the current players. And so that's part of it also. But you've got guys that are bowing down. And my reaction to that is like, spoiler alert. All right, this is not open heart surgery. It's really open and shut, not open heart surgery. The NBA, private business. And of all the sports leagues, the NBA, more than any of the major sports leagues, hold themselves to a different moral authority. They consider themselves the moral authority on all social issues. In America, by the way, not in China. They don't dare mess with the golden goose in China. But when it comes to the United States, they got hot takes on everything, and they want you to live a certain way. And if you don't agree with their dogma, then they're going to shove it down your throat. And so for them, they really have to do something. Ja Morant is a player who is an employee. He is subject to league rules. He's a high-paid employee. But if your corporation has a no-guns policy and a ethics policy where you have to follow the code of conduct and represent, you're always representing the brand, the NBA. And so you have to abide by those rules, and that's just the way it is. So what's the big deal? Now, what kind of actual punishment is Ja Morant going to get? So I sent some feelers out to people I know, and on my scorecard, I have indefinite suspension to be reviewed after 25 games. And I'll tell you what I'm hearing here. All right, so the word is the NBA is going to go indefinite 25 games. Now, this could change, but at this point, that's the way they're leaning. And the reason is the law of the hibachi. The law of the hibachi, as it was explained to me, that Adam Silver is just going to follow the lead of the late David Stern, and the precedent has been set. Gilbert Arenas, one of the famous moments in NBA history, if you are old enough to remember, Gilbert Arenas was a star guard. I would say about the level player that Ja Morant is. And Gilbert Arenas got into a kerfluffle with a teammate named Javarius Crittenden in the Wizards locker room. And they each pulled guns. They went for the guns in the locker room. And Gilbert Arenas, who was a big deal, a very popular player on a mediocre Washington Wizards team, he was suspended indefinitely. Now, that turned out to be a 50-game suspension in total. At the time, David Stern issued a prepared statement saying that the actions of Gilbert Arenas led him to conclude that Arenas is not currently fit to take the court in an NBA game. Can't you see the new version of the NBA, Adam Silver, the new people, say, well, right now Ja Morant needs to step away. They won't use the language David Stern uses. They'll probably say this is some kind of mental health issue because that's the vogue term. And, of course, posting videos on Instagram with guns is a mental health issue. I imagine that'll pop up here. Someone will bring that up. But that's aside the point here. All right. But I'd also like to point out that Crittenden, I did not notice this. Maybe you saw this or not. He was in prison. He actually killed someone. He was guilty of manslaughter. He killed a woman, and he was in jail for like the last decade. He just got out last month. There's a random factoid that I did not know about. But, yeah, he was supposed to go to jail for a lot longer, but they worked out a plea deal.